the messenger. Allah Quran and Surah Al-Imam, 175 translation. O ye who have faith, O ye who believe, fear Allah as it is His right to be feared. Do not die except as Muslims. Then Allah says in Surah Nisa, the first ayah, O people, fear your Lord. The Lord who created you from one soul and created from its mate, and dispersed from both of them many men and women. Fear Allah for whom you ask one another and maintain family ties. Verily Allah is ever watching over you. And then in the 33rd surah, the 70th and the 71st ayahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the translation, O you who have faith, fear Allah and speak upright words, speak the truth. For that He will correct your deeds and forgive your sins. And whoever obeys Allah and His messenger has won a tremendous victory. And verily, the most truthful speech is the book of Allah, Kitab Allah. The best guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First one says, a newly invented matter is bid'ah. Every newly invented matter is a religious innovation. And every religious innovation is misguidance. And every misguidance is in the hellfire. Today is a special day. Salatul Jumu'ah. The best day of the week for those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and who love His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam above all and anything else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. Through Allah's grace and mercy, His qadr, I'm giving a khutbah today. I wasn't supposed to give a khutbah today, at least as far as I planned. But man plans and Allah is the best of plans. Imam Rabi had planned to give a khutbah today, but he's not feeling well, so he called me and asked me, but I'd be willing to. And I said yes. Even though at the time I had no idea about what I was going to talk about, let's say. So, but as Allah always does, through His grace and mercy, He provided something for me to talk about. And let me say this. I know there's somebody getting married today. Okay. Brother was very close to me. All right. I love him purely for Allah's sake. He just doesn't know how much I love him in terms of that. And being here honored to perform his nikah. But the khutbah is not about marriage in that sense. It's about something else. Not that a khutbah about marriage is not something we could all benefit from. But inshallah, I'm not the one to give that. Inshallah, someone else who could better be able to do so. But there's a hadith that was collected by Imam Muslim, rahimahullah. This hadith says, An Abi Hurayrata, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بدأ إسلام غربيا فسيعود كما بدأ غربيا فطوبى للغرباء. In this hadith, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu is reported to have said that he heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, Islam began as something strange. It will return to being strange. So blessed are the strangers. Again, from Abu Hurairah, from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islam began as something strange, and it would return to being strange. So blessed are the strangers. You hear this hadith, and the question automatically comes to mind. Who are the strangers? Who are they? What are they to be about? One of the responses that the Prophet ﷺ gave, he said, Tuba is for the strangers. And immediately the question becomes, what is Tuba in the circumstance? Some of the Mufassirin, the hadith said Tuba refers to Jannah, refers to paradise. Another answer that was given by the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and when asked who are the strangers, he said, a righteous people surrounded by an abundance of evil people. And the evil, those who disobey them, are more numerous than those who obey. Again, a righteous people surrounded by an abundance of evil people. Those who disobey them are more numerous than those who obey them. Imam Ahmed, rahimahullah, and this hadith was authenticated by the great hadith scholar, perhaps the greatest hadith scholar of the 20th and 21st century, Nasruddin al-Albani, rahimahullah. Says, these narrations, may Allah bless you, describe a group of individuals who are ghuraba, strangers. They are the strangers. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ informed us in this hadith that indeed Islam began as something strange, and this is because when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had been called to Islam, the call to worship of Allah, none but the Most High in Mecca, only a few people followed him. Those who followed him and him were surrounded by those who disbelieved. But those and the few who followed him were the ghuraba. They were strangers in what they believed and what they put forth. They were practicing something and doing something that would change all of Meccan society. It would change societies throughout the world. Because the one thing we have to remember here before going farther, the ghuraba are not peculiar to one place. The ghuraba are where there are any of those, no matter what the number, that strive and follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and believe totally in Allah, that they understand the hadith, Kuli amalin bin niyah. Every action is but by intent, because every action that they do is nothing except for the pleasure of Allah, and no one else included in that. So the ghuraba are any and everywhere. The ghuraba are in India, where Muslims are persecuted just because they're Muslim by a Hindu population that outnumbers them almost 4-1. The ghuraba are those in Philistine, in Palestine, who constantly strive their best to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. The ghuraba may be that small group of Sunni Muslims still within Shia Iran, who still do their best to follow the Quran and the Sunnah, but nothing more than seeking Allah's pleasure. The ghuraba are those amongst the surrender who follow the Quran and the Sunnah, nothing but for the sake of Allah. The ghuraba of those Muslims in China, 60 million of them, and from amongst them, those who do their best to follow the Quran and the Sunnah. The Ghuraba are those within the confines of what is called the United States of America, who do their best, no matter what, to follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. These are the Ghuraba. They're not confined by place. They're not confined by time. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a promise to the Prophet ﷺ that what? There will always be, there will never cease to be a group of those who truly believe in him and follow the sunnah of his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The question becomes, for each and every one of us, are we willing to do what it takes to be the Ghuraba? Because if we're not, then that which we want to achieve most, paradise, is not going to happen. And it's not me saying that. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in more than one way. In more than one way. And again, one of the great scholars of Islam, Al-Barbahari, rahmullah, he said, and know that there should never cease to be a group from the people who are people of the haqq, the truth, and the sunnah. And they are guided by Allah Ta'ala. And by way of them, Allah guides others. And through them, Allah gives life to the sunnah. If you wonder why the sunnah never dies, this is why. If you wonder why constantly we call, follow the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is because if we don't, there is no success. If we don't, there is no success. And notice what Barbahari says here. He says, and know that they shall never cease to be a group from the people who are people of the haqq. The haqq here means truth. And sunnah. And then this. They are guided by Allah Ta'ala. And by way of them, Allah guides others. And through them, Allah gives life to the sunnah. SubhanAllah. You see how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Now, what happens when that doesn't happen? When we don't do that? When we aren't doing our best to strive to be able to go to buy the strangers to whom the Prophet ﷺ said, glad tidings to the Ghuraba. Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, perhaps other than Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was very special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's the only one of all the prophets that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent as referred to as a Khalil Allah, the friend of Allah. He was promised so much. And in Surah An-Nam, the 6th surah, Allah relates how Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam went to his father, Azar, and asked him, why are you praying to those things that can do you no harm or good? His father's response was to say to him, you need to leave. If you don't leave, I will be the first amongst the people to stone you. Ibrahim left. But he was a dutiful son. His father had asked him to keep him in mind, to pray for him. And as a dutiful son, Ibrahim did. However, there's a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, is Sahih, that Ibrahim and his father will meet on Yom Qiyamah. And Ibrahim's father will say to him, "Yeah, my son, I'm ready to believe and follow what you've talked about, what you told me then. But I need you to pray and ask for me to be forgiven." Ibrahim alayhi salam, being a dutiful son and keeping his word, he prayed to Allah to forgive his father. Sincerely. And while he was making the dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, "Ya Ibrahim, look behind you." Ibrahim looked behind him. And what did he see? His father was transformed into a hyena, covered with dung. And then he was grabbed by his legs and tossed into the hellfire. See, this is the end of those who reject this strange thing called Islam. But however, it is also the end for those of us who embrace the truth and then turn our backs on it. You see, there are those amongst the Muslim Ummah who have said, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah." And they, quote unquote, practice the deen for maybe 6 months, a year or more. And then they leave. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, excuses were made for Muslims for practically anything except one thing. If a Muslim woman or male left making the salah, the Prophet ﷺ referred to them as kafirs. So what is that we have before us, amongst us? How many of us have children at the age of reason, taught how to pray, taught to fear Allah, and they turn their back on it? What will be their end? Because they will not be from amongst the strangers. And if they don't repent, how does someone stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not having made salat for 15 years? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, what did he tell us? He told us, don't despair in being forgiven for the major sins that you may commit. But then he says something else. Don't dare become delusional in thinking that with the minor mistakes that you make, that Allah will automatically forgive them. SubhanAllah. The only protection, in one sense, from the evil ones, from the shayateen, the human and the jinn of them, to be protected is to strive to be of the ghuraba, of the strangers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that in Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have the best example. But being honest amongst ourselves, myself first and foremost, how many of us truly attempt to follow the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How many of us fool ourselves and thinking that we do. You see the danger of bid'ah, innovation. There's no such thing in Islam as good bid'ah. I don't care, not because I don't care, but it doesn't matter if it's not from the Prophet ﷺ, something that he said, that he did, that he saw others do, that he didn't object to, and is interjected into it. What is it that he said? Anyone who injects something into this affair of ours, meaning him and his companions, will have it rejected. Will have it rejected. And the danger of bid'ah is it begins to be practiced. And it's practiced for so long, people look at it and think it's part of the deen. And it's not. And it's not. So in Khutbah al-Hajjah, every dalala is a misguidance, and every misguidance is in the hellfire. But if we aren't about being the ghuraba, striving to be the ghuraba, what are we saying about ourselves? In another hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Allah looked upon all the people of the earth, Arab and non-Arab, and despised all of them. Again, Allah looked upon all the people of the earth, Arab and non-Arab, and despised all of them, except for some remnants of the Ahl Kitab, the people of the book, meaning Jews and Christians. And then he said to the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "O Prophet, I sent you to test you and to test others by way of you. And I have revealed to you a book that cannot be washed away with water." So Imam Muslim writes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he despised all of these people because of their polytheism and because of their depravity in ways in terms of their conduct and their behavior and their idolatry and their killing and their murder and their separation and their hatred of each other. There's a hadith as it regards this circumstance. The hadith was compiled by Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, on the authority of Ahmad Qabab ibn al-Ard. This person, Ahmad al-Qabab, he fought at Badr with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was with the Prophet ﷺ, and he noted this. He said, "I was with the Prophet ﷺ, and I watched him pray all night without stopping. He did not stop until the break of dawn." Kabab said that he said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Ya Rasulullah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I've never seen you or observed you make this prayer before." And the Prophet ﷺ replied, "This was a prayer of eagerness and fear." Of eagerness and fear. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, I asked my Lord for three things. Two he granted, and one he didn't. One of the things the Prophet ﷺ said that he asked, he said, I asked Allah Ta'ala not to let our enemies prevail over us. This was granted. He said, I asked my Lord, Allah Ta'ala, not to destroy us like he had destroyed those who came before us. And he said, this was granted. But then there's that third one that wasn't granted. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I asked my Lord not to allow us to be confused with party and political strife. And he didn't grant that one. So when we take a look at this, one of the things that plagues the Muslim Ummah is that third one. And it started right after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. The first time, Musalama the liar, and the woman whose name I forget, that said she was a prophetess, in the wars of Ridda, the wars of apostasy. Some of the tribes in the Arabian Peninsula who had taken Islam decided that because they took the Shahada from the Prophet ﷺ, they no longer had to honor the commitment. So they refused to pay the zakat. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu said, the zakat will be paid even if I have to go take it. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq died of natural causes. The next three Khalifas will all be murdered. Umar ibn al-Khattab was stabbed. Uthman ibn Affan, the same. And Ali ibn Abi Talib. Those three were killed. But in particular, with the death of Ali, the fitna comes, political fitna, even before his death. In the Ummah, there were a group of people who felt Ali should have been the first Khalifa. Even though Ali himself only gave his loyalty and oath to the first three who preceded him. But Uthman's death causes a problem. Uthman's cousin, Muawiyah, had been made governor of Sham, of Syria. He was highly upset that Ali didn't pursue his cousin, or perhaps his uncle's death. Ali felt it was better to consolidate the Ummah. This ends up in civil war. And the fitna that started then has never went away. Has never went away. So being part of the Ghuraba, the protection is not to be taken onto a sidetrack by anyone who's professing other than following the Quran and the Sunnah, as it should be found. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, let me say this. I once, from this member, through Allah's grace and mercy, said that we as Muslims have nothing to be sad about in terms of being Muslim. And I'm saying that again. When a person comes to the minbar, he is supposed to remind the people of their duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and following the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not doom and gloom. I'm not standing here saying, oh my God, watch out, you this, you that, so forth and so on. No. The happiness, the joy, is to be able to do so. The happiness and the joy is to look upon you and assume as I must, in giving you your rights over me, that you are from the good Abba. And not think one thing less than that. We as Muslims have the truth. But you see, the problem is, perhaps not amongst us here, is that we have those who say they are Muslim and they do anything other than give the gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they are. See, a Muslim that gets involved in in the drug trade, no matter how he looks with his beard, the mark of prostration on his forehead, he's not from the good of God. Not. One who thinks that pleasing another human being because they have a higher political status and perhaps can be seen as being provided a way for them to gain materially, they're not from the good of God. Because if they were from the good of God, they would understand first and foremost that man plans and Allah is the best of plans. No matter what the situation is. That's one of the great fallacies that we deal with, this aspect of that man has unlimited free will. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because if you take that out to where it goes, it means that man can operate outside of the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a total impossibility. It cannot happen. And perhaps the sooner we recognize that and understand it and put it into practice, the better we would be in terms of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam will return to something strange. It was strange during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Even today, no one has ever seen anything like it as such. The Prophet ﷺ said, speaking to his companions before his death, the nations will soon summon one another to attack you as people. When eating, invite others to share their dish. He, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, the nations will soon summon one another to attack you as a people when eating invites others to share their dish. The companions, radiallahu anhum, said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is it because we will be few in number on that day? And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, La, no. Rather, you will be great in number on that day, but you will be like the scum from the top of the floodwater. Allah will remove fear from the hearts of your enemies and cast a weakness into your hearts. What is the condition of the Ummah today? What is the condition of the Ummah today? How many places do we look and we see the Muslims under attack? Devastation in Palestine, now extending to Lebanon. The Rohingya in Burma, practically almost totally wiped out. As I said at the beginning, in India, in some parts of India, if you're a Muslim, you're afraid to come out of your house. In China, they cut off a whole section of Muslims, millions of Muslims, and not allow people to go and see them. So Sheikh Albani rahimahullah said, this is the reality. When the strangeness comes back, Islam, it is not because Muslims will be few in number. This is not what is intended, as you find from the end part of the hadith. Rather, the Muslims will be great in number. But the strangeness is in that which they carry a belief and methodology, that which they call to, that which they upon solid, firmness and steadfastness, just as the prophecy of Islam was in the face of opposition, the hatred and the boycotting. And he goes on to say, the strangers amongst the Muslims will be small in number. So, what is it that we should do? Are we willing to be of the Qur'an? If we're not, then we need to get to the point that we are willing to be of the Qur'an, the strangers. That small number of individuals who on Yom Kippur, through Allah's grace and mercy, will cross the Sirat with the speed of light. No question. Through Allah's grace and mercy of achieving that which we want most. So what shall we do? It's not rocket science of what we have to do to be of a good Abba. We just simply have to make sure that every breath that we take, everything that we do of that which is good and beneficial is for no other reason except to seek Allah's pleasure. For no other reason. That gets us into the position of being of the Qur'an. And if we're not going to do that, then what are we doing? ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملت به من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا قوم الكافرين أقيم الصلاة